If you have ever been in the position where someone keeps you close but refuses to choose you, I want you to hear this with clarity. The confusion is not happening because you are irrational. The confusion is happening because the dynamic is designed to keep you in a state of almost commitment, almost clarity, almost a relationship, almost secure. And the word almost is one of the most expensive words in attachment because it keeps your nervous system working without ever getting paid. Now let's name the pattern we are talking about. They will not commit, but they will not leave. They do not want the responsibility of a bond, but they want the benefits of a bond. They do not want the structure that protects you, but they want the proximity that comforts them. They do not want to be fully accountable to your needs, but they do not want to lose access to you. And if you are anxious-leaning, this dynamic can feel like a psychological hostage situation because your system keeps thinking, if I just do one thing correctly, the door will finally close or finally open. But the truth is, this dynamic is not a door. It is a revolving door. And revolving doors do not create stability. They create motion that looks like progress. So in this episode, we are going to do 3 things. We are going to decode why avoidant patterns so often create this kind of limbo. We are going to name what anxious attachment does inside this limbo that accidentally feeds it. And then we are going to build a clean structure that stops you from bleeding, without turning you cold, without making you perform, and without trying to control them. Because the only way out is not a perfect message. The only way out is a different contract. Now, here is the first truth that people miss. When someone will not commit but will not leave, you are not dealing with a lack of feelings. You are dealing with a conflict of incentives. Their nervous system is trying to keep 2 things at the same time. It wants connection and it wants control. It wants closeness and it wants autonomy. It wants the comfort of being wanted without the vulnerability of being known. And the reason this matters is because you cannot fix a conflict of incentives with more love. Love does not resolve incentives. Structure resolves incentives. If their system is rewarded by staying vague while still receiving access, it will stay vague. Not because they are evil, because it works. And this is where anxious attachment gets trapped, because anxious attachment is built to negotiate with hope. It is built to interpret partial warmth as movement. It is built to treat small signals as proof. It is built to keep the door open in case today is the day the pattern changes. So you keep giving full access to part-time behavior, and then you tell yourself you are being patient. But patience without evidence is not patience. It is postponement. And postponement is where your nervous system starts to break down. Let's get very concrete about what this looks like. The relationship has intense moments. There are nights that feel close, conversations that feel vulnerable, a trip, a weekend, a sudden confession, a rush of chemistry. Then, the next chapter is fog. Plans become vague, messages slow down, labels become avoided. You are told you are special, but you are not chosen. You are given intimacy, but not investment. You are given attention, but not a consistent rhythm. You are given reassurance, but only after you start to pull away. That is not intimacy. That is regulation. It is a system of contact that is timed to reduce their discomfort, not a system of commitment that is designed to protect both of you. And your body knows the difference. Your body is the first place the truth shows up. If the more you invest, the more you scan. If the more you care, the less you can relax. If you become more vigilant over time instead of calmer over time, your nervous system is telling you that you are not being held. You are being managed. Now, let's define what avoidant attachment often experiences in these moments, because this is where people either demonize them or romanticize them, and both are mistakes. Avoidant patterns do not experience closeness the way an anxious leaning system does. An anxious leaning system experiences closeness as safety, relief, orientation, home. Avoidant patterns often experience closeness as exposure. Exposure means stakes. Stakes means vulnerability. Vulnerability means loss of control. And when the system has learned that vulnerability is dangerous, it will look for control behaviors that reduce exposure without fully severing the bond. That is why you get the exact paradox. They do not want to leave because leaving creates loss and guilt and separation. But they do not want to commit because commitment creates expectation and exposure. So they create a third option. They create limbo. Limbo is connection without consequence. Limbo is closeness without a clean promise. Limbo is access without a contract. And for many avoidant-leaning people, limbo feels like the safest place. They can touch connection without being trapped by it. They can receive warmth without having to sustain the responsibility of it. They can disappear without having to explain, then return without having to repair. They can keep the bond alive in their mind while staying protected in their behavior. And if you do not see this as a system, you will keep treating it like a misunderstanding. You will keep trying to communicate your way out of a structure problem. Now, here is the second truth. In this dynamic, the anxious-leaning person often becomes the relationship. Not because they are weak, because their system is trying to stabilize uncertainty. So they start doing the labor that should be shared. They initiate, they clarify, they soothe, they translate tone, they manage timing. They keep things light when they want to ask for more. They edit themselves so they do not seem like pressure. They lower needs to preserve contact. They accept vague plans because at least it is something. And over time, this creates a silent contract. The contract is not spoken out loud, but it is enforced by what gets rewarded. The contract usually sounds like this: if you want access to me, be easy. If you want closeness, do not ask for clarity at the wrong moment. If you want commitment, do not create pressure. If you want repair, wait until I am ready. If you want consistency, accept inconsistency as temporary. And anxious attachment signs this contract because it prioritizes connection over comfort. It will take unstable connection over no connection. Then, it confuses endurance with love. It says, I am patient, I am understanding, I am loyal. But endurance is not proof of love. Endurance is often proof that you are trying to regulate yourself inside an unsafe rhythm. And the most dangerous part is how normal it starts to feel. You start believing that wanting basic predictability is too much. You start believing that asking for a label is pressure. You start believing that needing repair after hurt is overthinking. You start believing that your nervous system activation is a personality flaw instead of a data point. So your self-trust weakens. And when self-trust weakens, you negotiate with crumbs. Now, we need to name the part that makes this feel addictive, because once you see it, you stop being hypnotized by it. The addiction is not the person. The addiction is the reward schedule. When warmth is unpredictable, your brain treats it as significant. The text that arrives after silence becomes a powerful reward. The affectionate night after distance becomes a powerful reward. The soft voice after coldness becomes a powerful reward. Your nervous system experiences relief, and relief becomes the chemical marker that says, "This matters." Then, your brain starts scanning for how to recreate the reward. That scanning is what people call obsession. But it is not only desire. It is cognitive labor. It is your nervous system trying to create safety by understanding. And the reason it keeps failing is because the pattern is designed to stay unsolved. Limbo is built to keep you slightly hungry, slightly uncertain, slightly hopeful. Because hope is the drug of maybe. Maybe they will choose me. Maybe they are scared. Maybe they are healing. Maybe once work calms down. Maybe once they trust me. Maybe after the next trip. Maybe after the next talk. And you can keep living on maybe for a long time, but your nervous system pays interest on uncertainty. Now, let's make the distinction that changes everything. In a real bond, your needs create intimacy. They create adjustment. They create teamwork. When you express something honest, it brings you closer because the other person uses your truth as information. In limbo, your needs become negotiations instead of information. When you ask for basic predictability, you are labeled as too much. When you ask for clarity, you are labeled as pressure. When you ask for repair, you are told you are overthinking. When you express hurt, they reset with sweetness instead of repair. And you need to learn this fast. Sweetness is not repair. Sweetness is a reset. Repair is ownership plus change. Reset is charm plus forgetfulness. And people who are good at resets can keep you close for a very long time, because the system keeps restarting without ever upgrading. You feel like you are always almost back to the good version. That is the trap. Now, let's talk about why they do not leave, because this is where people get stuck. They do not leave because you regulate them. You provide something their system struggles to provide internally. You provide attention, warmth, stability, comfort, validation, a sense of being wanted, sometimes even purpose. You might also provide emotional labor that makes their life easier. You might be the one who makes plans, repairs tension, smooths conflict, keeps the connection alive. So even if they cannot commit, they do not want to lose what you provide. That is why you get the behavior that feels like keeping you on a shelf. They do not fully claim you, but they do not release you. They keep you accessible. They keep the door half open. They keep the option alive. And if you are anxious-leaning, being an option creates an identity wound. Your brain starts believing you need to prove you are choosable, so you perform. You try to be impressive. You try to be easy. You try to be irresistible. You try to be calm. You try to never ask at the wrong time. You try to become the perfect version. And that performance becomes exhausting because it is not love. It is an audition. Being chosen does not require an audition. Being chosen requires mutual investment. So here is the clean question that ends self-deception. Are you being kept, or are you being built with? Kept means you are useful to their comfort. Built with means you are included in their structure. Kept means they return when it benefits them. Built with means they show up because you are part of their life. Kept means your needs are managed. Built with means your needs are respected. Kept means the relationship expands in moments and collapses in patterns. Built with means the rhythm becomes steadier over time. Now, if you are listening and thinking, okay, but they say they care, they say they are scared, they say they are not ready, they say they have trauma, here is the key. Those stories can be true and still not change the pattern you are living inside of. Stories are not the test. Patterns are the test. So we are going to stop asking why and start asking what. What happens after closeness? What happens when you express a need? What happens after conflict? What happens when you ask for clarity? What happens when you stop performing? Those answers are closure. Because closure is not a message. Closure is a decision based on a pattern. Now we have to get practical, because insight without a shift keeps you in the same contract with better vocabulary. The most important move in this dynamic is not becoming colder, it is becoming steadier. Steady does not mean you punish. Steady means your behavior aligns with your standards. It means access matches behavior. It means you stop participating in contracts that require you to stay activated. So let's build the structure. The first structure is a rule for your nervous system. Do not communicate from urgency. Urgency is not truth. Urgency is a body state. When your body is hot, your mind becomes a prosecutor or a beggar. It tries to fix, clarify, secure, chase, perform, apologize, explain, send the perfect paragraph, ask for reassurance, ask if they miss you, ask what you are, ask if they are leaving, ask if you did something wrong. That is not intuition. That is alarm. So the first move is delay action when activated. Delay does not mean ignore. Delay means regulate first, then decide. And the decision is based on one question that cuts through fog. What behavior am I rewarding if I do this? If your message rewards withdrawal with attention, do not send it. If your message sets a clean standard without chasing and without trying to control how they receive it, you can send one short line and then stop. No follow-ups, no extra explanation. Let behavior answer, because what they do next is the truth. Now, the second structure is what I call the clarity shift. Replace why with what. Why questions are addictive because they imply there is a hidden explanation that will remove your pain. Why did they change? Why did they pull away? Why did they say that? Why did they disappear after intimacy? Why did they come back and then go cold? Why did they talk about the future and then avoid the label? But in avoidant anxious dynamics, you may never get a satisfying why, because their system reacts faster than their words, and sometimes they do not even know their own why. So you bring it back to what. What did they do? What pattern repeated? What happened after closeness? What happened when you expressed a need? What happened after conflict? What happened when you asked for clarity? What happened when you stopped making it easy?
Those answers pull you out of fantasy and into reality. Reality hurts, but reality stabilizes. Fantasy comforts, but fantasy destabilizes. Now, the third structure is the access rule. You decide what earns closeness. Consistency earns closeness. Repair earns closeness. Clear communication earns closeness. Follow-through earns closeness. And you decide what does not earn closeness. Vague returns do not earn closeness. Silence does not earn full access. Mixed signals do not earn deeper intimacy. Plans that never land do not earn full emotional investment. Resets do not replace repair. This is not a game. This is a nervous system safety protocol. Because a bond without rules turns your mind into a full-time investigator, and investigators do not relax. Now, if you are anxious-leaning, your fear will rise right here. You will think, if I do this, I will lose them. And that fear is real. But here is the clean truth. If you lose someone because you required predictability and repair, you did not lose a stable bond. You lost a dynamic that required you to stay activated to keep it alive. That is not love leaving. That is instability being removed. And this is where the story flips. The goal is not to guarantee their commitment. The goal is to guarantee your dignity and your nervous system stability. Because, paradoxically, stability is the only environment where an avoidant-leaning person can choose you with less fear. Not because you manipulated them, because you created a structure that reduces chaos. Avoidant systems do better when there is less emotional flooding and more clear containment. They do better when closeness is calm and autonomy is respected. They do better when the relationship is not a guessing game where every need becomes a crisis. So, when you become steady, one of two things happens. Either they adjust because the old rewards are gone and the new structure feels safer than they expected, or they drift away because the bond was never about building. Both outcomes protect you. Now we need to talk about the phrase they use that keeps you trapped, and we need to translate it correctly. They say things like, I am not ready. I am overwhelmed. I need space. I do not like pressure. I am busy. I am not good at this. Those phrases can be honest. The problem is what happens next. If you accept those phrases as a reason to lower your standards indefinitely, you are agreeing to an arrangement where your needs become secondary. The correct way to hear those phrases is not as a promise and not as a rejection. It is as information about capacity. Capacity is the thing you base your choices on, not the vibe, not the chemistry, not the potential. Capacity is what someone can sustain over time. So you watch. Do they take responsibility and increase follow-through? Do they reduce silence? Do they initiate repair? Do they show consistent movement? Or do they keep using the same language while the pattern stays the same? This is how you separate growth from avoidance. A person in growth can name the pattern, take responsibility, and adjust behavior over time. They do not just say the right things. Their behavior shifts. The silence reduces. The follow-through increases. They repair when there is rupture. Their words begin to match their actions. A person using growth language as a shield will sound enlightened while the structure stays vague. And that is the trap for anxious attachment, because anxious attachment can be soothed by language, but your nervous system is not regulated by language long term. It is regulated by predictability. Now, let's go deeper into why you keep hoping, because hope is not stupidity. Hope is a survival strategy. Your brain is trying to complete an open loop. It is trying to resolve uncertainty so it can relax. So you keep looking for the missing piece. What did I do? What do they feel? Are they coming back? Did it mean anything? Was it real? That chase for an answer becomes its own bond, because your nervous system is trying to protect you from being left in the dark. And this is why you can feel stuck even when you know better. Knowledge is not the same as nervous system safety. You can understand the pattern and still feel compelled to chase, because chasing is an attempt to reduce uncertainty fast. So the question is not, why do I feel this urge? The question is, what do I do when I feel this urge? And this is where you need a script you can remember. The urge to chase is not a command. It is a cue to return to structure. When you feel the urge, you pause. You slow your exhale. You ground your body, and you ask one question. What behavior am I rewarding if I act right now? Then, you choose the smallest action that stabilizes you without involving them. A walk, a shower, a meal, a task, a message to a friend, a journal entry that ends with a decision, not a question. Because decisions reduce ambiguity, and ambiguity is the fuel of limbo. And if you want your nervous system to calm, you have to stop putting it inside ambiguous environments and then asking it to relax. Now, there is a final layer that people do not like to admit. Sometimes they will not commit, but will not leave because you also have not fully left the contract. Not externally, internally. You keep leaving the door open for returns that are not real returns. You keep treating vague check-ins as proof. You keep treating the good moments as the real them. You keep treating the inconsistency as temporary. And as long as you keep doing that, the pattern works. So I want you to hear this gently but clearly. The most powerful move is not forcing them to decide. The most powerful move is deciding what you will participate in. Because when you decide, your body starts to relax. The nervous system loves decisions. It does not love perfect outcomes. It loves direction. And this is why sometimes the biggest relief is not when the person comes back, but when you finally stop negotiating with mystery. When you finally say, I will not be in a bond where my needs are negotiations. I will not be in a bond where repair is optional. I will not be in a bond where closeness comes in bursts and distance is the default. I will not be in a bond where I have to keep auditioning. That decision changes your energy immediately, because anxious energy is not only what you do, it is what your body broadcasts. When you stop chasing, you become steadier. And steadiness is the one thing this dynamic cannot survive unless it evolves. Either the relationship evolves or the illusion breaks. Both outcomes protect you. Now, let's close by giving you the clean diagnostic you can carry. Being chosen is not a feeling. It is a pattern. If you want to know whether you are being kept close but not chosen, stop listening to intensity and start watching structure. Watch what happens after closeness. Watch what happens when you express a need. Watch what happens after conflict. Watch whether repair exists. Watch whether their behavior becomes more consistent over time. Because a healthy bond reduces nervous system activation over time. An option dynamic increases it. And if the relationship cannot survive your steadiness, then it was never stable enough to hold you. Welcome to PsychBond. You're safe here.